Hey guys, it's your boy, zoom into my face 69 Gamer, and today I got 8 Easter eggs you didn't see in the Bendy and Ink teaser trailer clip 49 poster. Okay, but seriously, so I've got a few projects I'm working on, but rather than me rushing them out, I figured I'd have stuff like this in between, so I've called this show Halfway There. I figured I'd upload stuff like this, where I bring a particular topic to this channel to discuss. Whether it be in the comments or my Discord or on Twitter or wherever it is, we decide to discuss it. And this time it's Bendy and the Ink Machine. I haven't really known much about this for a while until like this previous week. I've just been researching Bendy and the Ink, watching Let's Plays, playing the game myself. For those who don't know what Bendy and the Ink Machine is about, it's about an animator known as Henry has been invited back to one of his old workplaces that he hasn't worked at for over 30 years, by the actual guy who owns the production, Joey Drew. Once he arrives, he discovers a bizarre ink machine. As we go further and turn on the ink machine, we actually find out that Joey had brought the characters in his cartoons to life, including the main character, Bendy, which is the main antagonist that seems to be chasing us around the whole studio. The whole goal is to escape the studio and find out what happened to all the staff members. Only 2 chapters have come out in this game, so that's quite bizarre that so many people have theorized on it. Every image that gets released as a teaser or a pic for chapter 3, it gets like theorized to death. I mean, there are so many videos and Reddit posts that come out about it, analyzing it, and it's amazing. I love it. It's a very passionate community, and I think it's great. Throughout the whole game, we find recordings and words written on the walls that help put this story together. Of what really happened at this studio. So I've eventually come to the conclusion that there are going to be 7 human characters that we're coming across. There is Henry, which is us, and the 6 staff members that are in the studio. As we find out on the tape recordings from Wally Franks, Joey Drew actually asked all the staff members to donate an item from of their desks to make the ink machine run.
Also, get this, Joey had each one of us donate something from our workstation. We put them on these little pedestals in the break room to help appease the gods, Joey says. Keep things going.
And in the show, we collect 6 items, so I assume there are 6 staff members, including Joey himself. I would assume Joey himself would class himself as a staff member, so he would be within that 6. And if that's the case, then that means we have only met 5 of the 6 staff members so far. Joey Drew, Wally Franks, Sammy Lawrence, Norman Pork, I don't know, and Susie Campbell. We also meet the musical director in Chapter 2, Sammy Lawrence, but was eventually killed, as we saw a picture at the end of Chapter 2, where he was kind of just devoured onto the ground, or absorbed, or whatever. But there's a 6th member that we haven't met yet that I assume will meet in Chapter 3. From the teaser trailer and the trailer itself, it seems to heavily imply that gears are involved in the 3rd chapter, and a gear is actually one of the items that was donated by one of the staff members. So I assume Chapter 3 could be about this 6th member that we haven't come across yet. I know there's a lot of hints to Angel Alice. We'll get to Angel Alice in a second, but for those fans who know what I'm talking about, Angel Alice has been hinted throughout a lot of teaser trailers for Chapter 3, but I personally feel like she will probably appear towards the end, as that's what's happened throughout all chapters so far. Bendy has appeared at the end of Chapter 1, Boris appeared at the end of Chapter 2, so Chapter 3 I feel like Angel Alice will appear at the end of Chapter 3. The first one was mainly about us, figuring out what had happened. The second one was about Sammy Lawrence and what happened to him. And the third one, I believe, will be about this 6th person, which is whoever's donated the gear to the ink machine. It turns out as we go further into the studio, there has been a work of black magic going on. There are satanic rituals that must have been going on, and some kind of cult has been formed in worshipping Bendy. There are 7 characters, but 6 coffins, which is a strange one. In Chapter 2, we actually come across 5 of them. There are 3 when we first enter the room with the whatever you want to call the circle on the ground. There are different names for it. And then in the room just next to it, we actually find 2 coffins. And then we don't actually see any more for the entire chapter of that game. But in Chapter 3, we actually see a 6th coffin. So 6 coffins, 6 members of staff, maybe. It's interesting like that. There's a lot of talk about heaven and hell. They seem to represent Bendy as the devil himself, because in many of the posters there's little dancing demon, and even one of the songs that Angel Alice sings, it's almost like Joey actually worshipped Bendy as the devil himself. I do want to point out that the 6th staff member can't be Henry, because Henry knew nothing about the ink machine. He'd only heard of it, but he didn't know how it worked. He had to listen to a tape recording of Wally Franks to actually mention that he needed to collect 6 items in order to get it to work. So I guess we could talk about the trailer that has just been aired for the 3rd chapter coming out, which has been announced to be in September. It actually starts out with a Bendy cartoon, which is quite interesting. It starts out with Bendy just walking with a picnic and getting pulled away from a skeleton. The picnic lands in Boris's lap, and Boris just starts eating the sandwich because he's quite goofy. Very similar to Goofy, obviously. Bendy tries to get some revenge on it, and he does, and Boris just kind of gets a bit clumsy. Bendy runs away and gets stuck in a corner and seems to be terrified until a mysterious figure walks up to him, and it just cuts to black. What's interesting to note about this final scene is that this is quite a human-like body walking up to Bendy, and then it cuts straight to the real world where Henry, supposedly Henry, is running away from Bendy. And we know he's running away from Bendy because at the very end we see Bendy jump out. So it's quite interesting that Bendy was in a cartoon, and then a mysterious figure walks up to him, and then the next shot we see is Bendy in the real world. So that transition is almost a hint to this is Joey pulling out Bendy and putting him into the real world. I believe that the cartoon itself is just a whole metaphor on the whole thing. It starts out that Bendy was supposed to be just an innocent cartoon, playing around, getting revenge on his friends who are being a bit goofy, but then someone interferes and takes it that one step further and brings him into the real world. I do feel that the skeleton coming out of the ground does remind me of the ink monsters that pop up from the ground within the games. So I assume that could be almost a representation that these ink monsters that we're seeing are actually souls, or since there's a lot of talk about a portal to hell and stuff, this ink machine could have been some kind of portal from hell. And these ink blobs that are appearing from the ground are actual souls coming through from hell and attacking you. There's a few things that other people have noticed. There's the Who's Laughing Now, which is the same writing that we saw in the room where Boris had his chest ripped open and he was on that table or whatever it was. There's also a Little Miracles station at the very end. We saw Henry run into it and it had a halo on it, obviously representing Angel Alice. Maybe things with a halo drawn on, Bendy can't get to you through there. I've seen something similar to that happen in a TV show known as Reaper, where it was about the devil, and one of the ways they stopped the devil from finding you was having a circle drawn on the floor, and when you step inside, the devil cannot see you or hear you. And since Bendy kind of represents the devil in this kind of bizarre studio, maybe that's what this halo is supposed to be representing. So I think we can talk about some of the theories. I will link all the theories I discuss about in the description below, so I recommend you check them out. They analyze this game to death in a good way. That's not me being harsh. I recommend you check them out. They're awesome guys. One theory suggests that the characters became the staff members from the studio. One of them has suggested that Susie Campbell, who is the voice actor or singer for a new character that was introduced quite recently, known as Angel Alice. We only find one tape recording of Susie Campbell talking about Angel Alice, and she actually mentions that she feels like Angel Alice is a part of her.
But this is the first character I've really felt a connection with. She's a part of me. Alice and I, we're going places.
This could be a hint that she became Angel Alice in whatever happened at the studio. And there's also a theory that Wally Franks actually became Boris, as there's actually a teaser trailer with Boris holding a spanner, which was the luxury item in the staff room. I'll leave a link to the theory on Boris being Wally Franks. There's a lot more information out there. But there is that suggestion that Susie Campbell became Angel Alice and Wally Franks became Boris. But then that leaves the question, who became Bendy? There are 3 cartoon characters, Boris, Angel Alice, and Bendy. But there are 7 if you include Henry, staff members at the whole thing. So who did the other 4 become? Well, we know that Sammy Lawrence seemed to become some kind of ink monster, but at the same time is been hunted down by Bendy. But he's almost over the moon that he's found another human, because he can sacrifice this person to Bendy in hopes that he doesn't get killed by Bendy. But instead, that isn't what happens, and he gets killed himself. But even then, Bendy still ends up hunting for us as well. In my opinion on where I think it's going, I think all 4 staff members became Bendy, and Henry is the final piece. There is a theory going out there, again, link in the description, on Theory Pop, there is a theory that Bendy is actually incomplete, and that Henry was supposed to be the final piece of the puzzle. This theory goes that in order for Bendy to become fully whole, he needed the 5 senses that the human has. Touch, taste, smell, hear, and sight. For the 5 senses. There are 5 chapters. Each title seems to be hinting at a different sense that the human has. As we know in the first chapter, Bendy doesn't seem to have any sense of where we are. He's just kind of reaching out, knowing that we're probably there somewhere. We notice that he doesn't have any eyes. In the second chapter, it was about sound. And notice how in the exact same chapter, it was about Sammy Lawrence, who is the musical director. And at the end of the chapter, he actually gets absorbed by Bendy, and when we see Bendy eventually arrive, he's actually looking around, listening for where you are, and can pinpoint where you are. But the final piece to make him fully complete is us, the sight. With Henry being an animator, he's obviously going to have the best vision, and that would make sense why Joey wants to invite us back to the studio, as he has something to show us. So the idea that I think I'm getting at is that Joey became obsessed with his creation, Bendy, and his side characters. But he wanted to take it that step further. He wanted to bring his characters off the page and into the real world. By doing so, he decided to start practicing in black magic. He used his staff to bring these characters to life. He placed them all onto that autopsy table, or we assume whatever it is. He used that room to test on the staff members and turn them into the things he wanted to. He turned Susie Campbell into Angel Alice and turned Wally Franks into Boris. He used the other 4 staff members, which included himself, to turn them into Bendy. These 4 represented 4 of the 5 senses: touch, taste, hear, and smell. He managed to get 3 of the staff members to turn them into Bendy. However, Sammy Lawrence may have escaped halfway through the process, which is why he was in hiding for the majority of the time in Chapter 2, before Bendy eventually found him and absorbed him and now can eventually hear. Joey also invited Henry around as the final piece of the puzzle that would make Bendy fully complete. So there you'd have it. You'd have 5 people all becoming Bendy, and then you'd have the other 2 characters, Wally and Susie, becoming Angel Alice and Boris. So, and that total makes 7 characters. Bendy would be the ultimate creation that Joey had made, and then the other 2 characters were there on the side as well, because they're not as big as Bendy. So that's what I feel is going on. Each chapter seems to represent one of the 5 senses that the human has. I recommend you check the full theory on that, as it goes a little bit more in depth. It would make sense that there are 7 characters, 2 of them have turned into the side characters, and the remaining 5 become one of the 5 senses of the human body, but all get put together into Bendy. Right now, Bendy has all 4 senses, but he doesn't have sight, which is Henry that he's running from. I think there's tons of other things you can talk about, but that seems to be the idea that I'm getting from all the things that I've come across. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed, guys. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave in the comments below any theories that you like, or you can check out my Discord and write some theories there, because that's usually where we discuss this kind of thing. It's just fairly new. Thank you guys for watching. Stay safe, and don't pull a picard.